The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the grocery store on a quiet Tuesday morning. Robert Hayes stood in the cereal aisle, his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, tucked close beside him. At 52, Robert had learned that the simple act of shopping for breakfast could hold more meaning than most people realized. It had been 3 years since his wife passed. And these small routines, stoozing cereal, picking out milk, deciding between wheat or white bread, had become their anchors. Robert Waugh was a man of average height, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, his dark hair showing distinguished threads of gray. He wore a simple red t-shirt that morning, comfortable and unpretentious. Emma had inherited her mother's dark hair and thoughtful expression, and she watched the world with a quiet wisdom that sometimes surprised him. "Dad, can we get the cornflakes?" Emma asked, pointing to a box on the middle shelf. Robert smiled and reached for it. "Of course, sweetheart." That's when everything changed. A man in a dark jacket appeared at the end of the aisle. His face was shadowed, his movements erratic. Before Robert could fully process what was happening, the man pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at them. His hand trembled, and his eyes darted around wildly. "Nobody move," the man shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. Further down the aisle, a woman in an elegant black dress froze, her eyes wide with shock. She had blonde hair styled perfectly and carried herself with the polished confidence of someone accustomed to boardrooms and business deals. This was Margaret Sinclair, though Robert didn't know it yet, the CEO of one of the largest retail chains in the country. Doing an unannounced store visit, the gunman swung his weapon between them. His panic escalated. "I said don't move. I need money, and I need it now." Robert felt Emma press against his leg, her small hand gripping his shirt. His heart hammered in his chest, but something deeper took over, not bravery, exactly, but a calm certainty born from years of facing life's hardships with grace. "It's all right," Robert said softly, his voice steady. He slowly lowered himself to one knee, placing the cereal box on the floor, making himself less threatening. "Nobody wants trouble here." The gunman's eyes fixed on him with wild intensity. "Don't move, or she dies," he screamed, waving the gun toward Margaret. Robert noticed what others might have missed, the man's hands shaking uncontrollably, the tears streaming down his face, the desperation that spoke of something deeper than criminal intent. This was a man at the end of his rope. "I can see you're hurting," Robert said gently, his tone the same one he used when Emma had nightmares. It happened, whatever's brought you here. It doesn't have to end this way." The gunman's face contorted. "You don't know anything about me." "You're right, I don't," Robert acknowledged. "But I know that, look. I've been there, not exactly where you are, but I've known what it feels like when the world closes in, and you can't see a way forward." Margaret watched in stunned silence as this stranger in a red t-shirt spoke to an armed man with the same patience a father might show a troubled child. The gunman's gun hand wavered. "I lost everything. My job, my apartment, my kids don't even talk to me anymore." Robert nodded slowly, understanding flooding through him. "That's a heavy burden. Losing what matters most, I understand that more than you know." Emma remained perfectly still beside her father, her trust in him absolute. "3 years ago, I lost my wife," Robert continued, his voice quiet but clear. "Cancer. And there were mornings I didn't want to get out of bed. Nights when I thought the pain would never end, but I had this little one depending on me." He gently touched Emma's shoulder. She needed her father, even when her father felt broken. The gunman's shoulders began to shake, his face crumpling. "What's your name?" Robert asked. "David?" the man whispered, his voice barely audible. "David, I'm Robert. This is Emma. And whatever you're facing right now, hurting people won't fix it. It'll only add to your pain. And trust me, you're already carrying enough." A store security guard appeared at the far end of the aisle, hand on his radio, but Margaret slowly raised her hand, signaling him to wait. Something extraordinary was happening, and she sensed that interrupting might shatter whatever fragile connection Robert was building. "I don't know what else to do," David said, tears flowing freely now. "I'm 58 years old, and I'm useless. Nobody wants to hire me. I can't even afford food." Robert's expression softened further. "You're not useless, David. You're in pain, and pain makes us do desperate things. But look at Miriali. Look at me. I'm standing here with my daughter, buying cereal on a Tuesday morning, and I'm telling you that life can surprise us. Even in our darkest moments, there's a door somewhere we haven't seen yet." The gun slowly lowered, David's arm growing heavy. With the weight of his despair, "What if I helped you find that door?" Robert offered. "Put the gun down, and let's talk. Really talk, not as a criminal and a victim, but as two men who've known hardship." Margaret found herself holding her breath. In her 20 years of corporate leadership, managing thousands of employees and navigating countless crises, she had never witnessed anything like this. This wasn't negotiation, it was pure, unfiltered compassion. David's hand dropped to his side, the gun pointing at the floor. He looked at Robert with anguished eyes. Why would you help me? I just threatened you and your daughter. Because I see a father who's lost his way, Robert replied simply, and because somewhere along the line, someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. That's how it works, David. We pass it forward. The security guard moved forward cautiously, and David allowed the weapon to be taken from him without resistance. He sank to the floor, sobbing, as police sirens wailed in the distance. Robert stayed with him until the officers arrived. Speaking quietly, offering reassurance, Emma stood close to her father, her small hand in his, absorbing this lesson in humanity that no classroom could teach. Later, after the police had taken statements and the store slowly returned to normal, Margaret approached Robert in the parking. Lottie was helping Emma into their modest sedan, making sure her seatbelt was fastened properly. Excuse me, Margaret said, her voice catching slightly. I'm Margaret Sinclair. I needed to speak with you before you left. Robert turned, offering a gentle smile. Are you all right? That must have been frightening. She shook her head in wonder. I'm fine, thanks to you. What you did in there, I've never seen anything like it. The calm, the compassion, where did that come from? Robert glanced at Emma, who was watching through the car window. Life has a way of teaching us what matters. When you've faced real loss, when you've had to rebuild from nothing, you learn to see people differently. That man wasn't a monster. He was someone's father, someone's son, having the worst day of his life. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. I run a company with 50,000 employees, and I thought I understood people. But you showed me something today. I'd forgotten that everyone's carrying burdens we can't see. We all are, Robert agreed. The question is whether we'll let those burdens harden us or help us connect with others. They talked for 20 minutes in that parking lot, two people from completely different worlds finding unexpected common ground. Margaret learned about Robert's work as an electrician, about the support groups that had helped him through grief, about the simple daily rituals that had saved him. Robert learned about Margaret's own Losiza sister to addiction, a marriage that had crumbled under the weight of corporate ambition. Before they parted, Margaret made Robert a promise. That man, David, I'm going to make sure he gets help. Real help. Counseling, job placement, assistance, whatever he needs. You showed me today that kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing we have. Robert nodded, his eyes warm with approval. That's good. Everyone deserves a second chance. As Robert drove away with Emma chattering beside him about breakfast plans, Margaret stood in the parking lot, watching their car disappear. She pulled out her phone and began making calls to her head of human resources, to her foundation director, to a therapist she knew who specialized in crisis intervention. The story spread, though not in the way these things usually do. Were no viral videos, no social media frenzy. Instead, it moved through quiet conversations and deliberate actions. Margaret restructured her company's approach to hiring older workers. She created a crisis fund for employees facing financial emergencies. She began each board meeting not with profit reports, but with stories of human connection. And David, 2 months later, he sent Robert a letter. He was working again, volunteering at a food bank 3 days a week. He'd reconnected with his youngest daughter. The road was still difficult, he wrote, but he could see the door Robert had talked about. Robert read the letter to Emma one evening, her head resting against his shoulder. See, sweetheart, this is why we always choose kindness. You never know whose life you might change. Like you changed mine, Daddy. Emma asked, her voice soft. Robert hugged her close, his heart full. Like we change each other's, every single day. In a world that often moves too fast, that celebrates strength over vulnerability and success over compassion, Robert Hayes reminded everyone who heard his story that the greatest power we possess is our humanity, our willingness to see each other's pain and respond with grace. That's a lesson that never grows old, no matter how many years we carry.